right, welcome to Lighthouse Baptist Church for Sunday School. Daniel, will you help us up in a word of prayer, please?
Lord, I thank you for bringing us all here safely, Lord. I just pray that you bless this service and help us to focus on understanding, Lord. You give us wisdom from your word. Help us to find use for it in our lives. I pray, Lord, that you would keep us all focused for today. Keep us, our minds on your word. Help us to try to find the applications that you have in our lives, Lord, so that we can properly live for you. Just pray that you would keep us clear and awake and focused. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. It's one of the nice things about Proverbs. There's lots of applications. You can always find applications in your life if you try hard enough, but Proverbs is a very practical book. Lots of good things in it, repeated frequently because they're important. As always, we should do a little bit of review, and so I went back to the first chapter of Proverbs, and I looked at what I had written down for what is wisdom. I had written down it was the application of knowledge, and that's true enough, but I'd like to add another word to it. That's the proper application of knowledge. So you can take knowledge and then you can apply it improperly. People do that all the time. So you have to have your knowledge and you have to understand your knowledge so that you can apply it properly. Last week we talked about a bunch of different things, but a lot of what we talk about here is righteousness versus the wicked. We are righteous because we are saved. Okay, now we can be carnal, and if you're here today, that kind of means you're not really a carnal Christian, although you might not be up to snuff, because a carnal Christian really doesn't have much to do with God at all. I have a friend who I wouldn't really describe as a carnal Christian, but I know he hasn't gone to church in a long time. He doesn't have a church that fits him, and he's stopped trying for some reason. That's a little bit more accurate. So the righteous, we see there's many, many good and proper things that we get as righteous, but we have to tap into those things. And so we need to have the knowledge. I keep talking about knowledge, but I tell my daughters, one of my daughters wrote a thing about the death penalty. And then she said she changed her mind on the death penalty. And I was like, well, I hope you changed it to the right thing from the wrong thing. And no, she didn't. She went out and she did research and she found some Catholic priest or whatever they have. They have different ranks that I never pay any attention to because I just don't care. But maybe he was a cardinal. That's a thing, right? Cardinal. Okay. I think it was a cardinal. So he said, it takes away their humanity. And then she found something from Amnesty International. And I'm like, oh, honey. I wanted to be really careful to not criticize her. But I tried to say, look, your sources are important. And honestly, your Bible is the source. And so whatever we think, if it isn't the proper application of the Bible, well, then we're wrong, okay? If sometimes there's different interpretations, like, okay, we need to take care of the poor. Well, does that mean that, we should vote for Democrats who like to, have social programs and stuff? Well, you can interpret that how you want. I would say no, because the Bible also teaches personal accountability. But you always have to take this back to the Bible. So Titus, whenever he's looking at something as he goes forth in his life, he needs to first say, what does the Bible say about this? And lots of things, because the Bible is very general in many ways, although it's very specific in many others. You might not know initially what to do. And that's where the prayer comes in. But you also need to search the Bible and see if there's something in there. You will find an answer through prayer and study. I said last week in verse, and I kind of ended last week with riches profit not in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivereth from death. Yeah, when you're unsaved, that's all you've got is this world. So they're going for the things that are going to make this world more pleasant. So that, in their mind, is usually riches. They can't tap into any of the supernatural things that we have. They don't have the hope that we have. They don't have the confident expectation of life after death. If they believe anything, it's nonsense most of the time. Occasionally, they might believe that there's a hell. But if they believe there's a hell, they believe that their good works are going to deliver them from that. And they believe that incorrectly. And that's why I harp back on righteousness. You have to be saved to get the righteous. So, verses 5 and 6. The righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. Verse 6. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but the transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. Which is always interesting. The word naughty doesn't mean, shame on you, like a little kid. It's far, far worse. So we got to remember that our personal view of words is not, usually, very frequently doesn't line up with what the Bible says. So that's why it's important to have something like the Strong's Concordance or a Bible dictionary, something so you can actually understand these words. But so righteousness directs and delivers us. I want to talk about these two things. So when you don't know what to do, righteousness will help direct you. Once again, going back to the Bible. And I keep repeating this. Why do I keep repeating this? Because people don't do this. They don't go to the Bible. They go and they do what they want to do. If they go and seek advice, it's usually, they might go to people that have no business giving advice, like their friends. I mean, going and asking, for Titus to ask his friend what he should do with his life would be pretty silly. What does his friend know? It's not that his friend's a bad person or doesn't know anything, but that's not great advice. If you want to ask somebody about starting a business, you'd be better asking Elon Musk than the homeless guy on the street, because one is obviously successful in starting a business and one is not. But it will direct you. Now, the other thing I think is really easy to gloss over is the delivery. Righteousness will also deliver you. If you are being righteous, and I'm talking about practical righteousness in your daily life, okay? So there's the positional righteousness, which you have when you get saved, and then there's the practical, or as I learned it in college, the progressive righteousness or sanctification. That's your daily walk and what you're doing. By coming to church, you are practicing righteousness. Okay, doesn't mean you're awesome, super. You may not want to be here, but this is your daily walk. And that's why, we make our kids go to church until they're out of the house, and then obviously we can't control them anyway. I mean, we can put a bunch of pressure on them, but then it's up to them, right? That's between God and themselves. We've done all we can, and now other than occasionally maybe asking, although the kids usually, they know what they want. They know what they should do, so that's probably not even that helpful. But, so, when you're doing the right things, and then you get in a bad situation, does that mean you did something wrong? Well, not usually, not if you're doing the right things. I mean, if you think you're doing the right things, but they're actually the wrong things, that's possible. Maybe you misunderstood. But if you're actually doing the right thing and then you're in a bad situation, well, that's not your fault. That's probably a trial that God has brought, okay? And so now you have a couple options. You can get mad at God, which is the common one. and I'm guilty of doing that in the past. Hopefully I won't ever do that again, but can't promise anything. You can get mad at God, or you can trust God to get you out of it. The best example that I can think of is my dad, who was a school teacher, and probably because of my mom, I would guess, because I do believe women have kind of a radar, have an intuition. They see dangers to their marriage and stuff. Because my mom was hypersensitive to some stuff, and she was, looking back on it, she was very right. There was a next door neighbor who was single and slept around and, very, very friendly woman. And she was attractive, at least physically. My mom disliked her because of the threat she posed. Whereas my dad is like, he's just trying to be kind and do little things for her, like just because she doesn't have a man to take care of her. And so it's like my dad's trying to do what he thinks is right, and he's not interested. But my mom is very concerned, and really, there were many fights. But moving on. So my dad was a teacher, and so he interacted with high school girls a lot, and at least one teacher when I was in school that I know of got kicked out for having, or left. I don't know if he was fired or resigned or what, for having a relationship with like a senior girl. I think it might have even been the same girl who, well, getting ahead of myself. So my dad was always careful, always left the door open whenever there were another female in the room. This was before Me Too and everything. And when he taught in another town and a girl wanted to carpool with him so they could save money and stuff, I went along as a chaperone. So my dad was careful. And then there was this time, because my dad was always so careful and proper regarding relationships, that a girl accused him of doing something, but she didn't like take it to the authorities, which nowadays would have been a death sentence, but even she like mentioned it to some kids in her class, and they all just laughed at her. They laughed at her. They basically laughed her to scorn. And because nobody could imagine Mr. Ballard doing this. And that's really important, because that could have destroyed his life. And in this day and age, there's a really good chance that could have something like that would destroy your life. Although we would still have to trust God in that situation. So I believe his righteousness effectively delivered him from that. I'm sure if we spent time, we could come up with others. The other kind of analogy I want to mention is, when you're driving, I probably should have said this before because it's more with the directions. I used to get stressed out about driving because directions are hard. I mean, if I didn't know where I was going, I have to figure out, okay, what turns do I take and things like that. And what landmarks do I look for, what roads? It's like, oh no, I missed that. Now how do I get back there? I mean, yeah, it's not really that big a deal, but it stressed me out. And, to be honest, it still stresses me out a little bit, even with the advent of GPS. But if you had good directions in your life, my wife is an excellent navigator. She's got a good head for directions, and she gives them really well. She gives them ahead of time. She follows up. She has a far less annoying voice than the Google Maps that I use, so it's not obnoxious when she, if I'm not paying attention, she lightly touches my arm or my leg or something to, she's a great navigator. And so that's kind of like, God gives you these directions, and they can be subtle, they can be obvious, but God gives you directions. And he gives you warnings, such as a UPS really doesn't like left turns. When they calculate routes, they don't find the fastest route, they find usually fastest combined with safest, and left turns factor into their routes. They avoid them. If two things are equal or almost equal, one has a left turn, then that one's a no-go. They'll pick the other one. On the way to church, I looked up statistics. Left turns are the cause of about a quarter of the incidents, traffic accidents. Just making a left turn. That's something that I'll bet most people in here don't think about when they're driving. That about 22 to 25% of all accidents are caused, well, a left turn is incorporated and, there's other causes, if you will, but a left turn is part of it. So there's things to avoid. If everything is equal, then you take the less dangerous one. When I worked at Taos, it basically was in an office complex. There were multiple routes into that office complex, 2 primary routes that I could take. And if I was coming up to a stoplight, the light was green, then straight, and I would take a right and I would go in. But if it was backed up, I could bypass that and take a right, but that right, I had a left turn. Is that a big deal? No, probably not. But it's just a piece of knowledge. And then if you understand that piece of knowledge, and you can apply that knowledge to your driving life, maybe you can avoid an accident. So God gives us those things. God gives us this knowledge that then we have to understand so we can apply it to our life and avoid problems. Not all problems can be avoided. Sometimes you have drunk drivers that hit you. Sometimes you have people that are texting and driving and the traffic stops all of a sudden and you get rear-ended. You can't avoid everything, but you can avoid some problems if you let God and his righteousness guide you. And I don't know about you, but I like to avoid problems. I mean, part of me wants an easy life, but then part of me knows an easy life is bad for me. And even at a young age, I knew that. Why did I have 6 kids? Was that an accident? I mean, I'm not Catholic. I do know what birth control is, and I'm not against it. So, I mean, I've had that joke. Like, corner drugstore. Why did we have 6 kids? Because I felt it would be good for me and my children to have more kids. I mean, God also says, be fruitful and multiply. So it's obeying his commandment. Okay, if you have 2 kids, that's not 2 times 1. Are you really multiplying? If you have 2 kids and you and your wife, I mean, there's you, and then if you just have 2 kids, you're not really multiplying. Once again, not judging people who only had 1, 0, or 2 kids. I'm just saying that's the way I interpret that. You can interpret it differently. You can have reasons for not having kids. I'm not judging you. But I chose to do some things that I knew would help me grow. And I knew it wouldn't feel good, right? Forrest went into the Marines because he knew it'd be good for him. Or he has faith that it would be good for him. Titus is doing something similar. They're not doing it because it's easy. Verse 7. When a wicked man dieth, his expectation shall perish, and the hope of unjust men perisheth. Verse 8. The righteous is delivered out of trouble, and the wicked cometh in his stead. We have to remember that the unsaved, I've heard it said, this is the only heaven they'll ever have. Okay? When they die, they get to go to hell. Yay. Okay? That's not going to be as nice as this earth, right? So there's different levels of hell, different penalties. I don't know about levels. There's different. People get their punishment custom tailored for them, okay? We all like custom things. Here's a fancy word for you, bespoke. Okay, if something is bespoke, it's custom. A bespoke suit is custom made for you. So they get a custom tailored hellish experience. But that's still not got to be fun, no matter how sweet a person they were, right? Those are the people that are frustrating and discouraging, and it's like, I wish I could do more, right? I wish I could put more pressure on them. I wish that did something, but I can't. All I can do is give them the gospel and then pray. And there's people that I really care about, but I don't know how to get through to them. There's one person, my friend Audrey, who, I gave her the gospel when I was in California last year, and she heard it, but she has reasons, and I won't go into it too much, but at this point, I now honestly feel like it's basically giving something to somebody who's just going to trample on the gospel. It's where you almost have to do the whole dust your feet off, or what's the pig analogy? Forgot, but it's like giving something to pigs. It's just not appreciated. It's rejected. So I'm at the prayer state, but this is all they have. So we shouldn't be surprised when they're living for today. When they want to go out and drink and be merry, when they want to just indulge in pleasure, this is all they've got. And now, if you do that, you'll end up dead in 10 years or so. If you do that with abandon, if you do that in moderation, maybe you can get a lot longer life. But they realize that there is no, they know there's no guarantee. We block that out of our minds. Even Christians sometimes, we think, oh, this is how things are going to go. This is the way every day's gone, and we just get into that routine. We think we're always going to have that. But when the wicked man dies, that's it. All their expectations shall perish. All their hopes and dreams are gone. Now they have the judgment. The righteous is delivered out of that trouble. Okay, we know that. And the wicked cometh in his stead. So this is kind of interesting because it's the wicked cometh in his stead. So we should have been judged, but we're not because of Christ's righteousness and what he did for us. And as a chance to give you a vocabulary lesson, is vicarious. My dad always used the word vicarious, so I knew that word growing up. I don't know who here knows the word vicarious. Here's how my dad used it. Vicarious. So he would say, frequently, because he was a teacher, that parents got a vicarious thrill from their children's activities and sports. Okay? So, what their kids did and their success directly made them, parents really happy. And if their kids were failing and they're unhappy, it was like this one for one, right? Now, Forrest called me the other day. He called me, not his mom, so that was special. And he told me he had been promoted to squad leader. So I was happy. I was happy for him. And I was blessed because he told me first, so he actually, because I'm the mean one of the parents, although I'm trying to be nicer now that he's out. But I don't want to get a vicarious thrill out of what he does. I want to be happy for him, right? It's not about me. And when it's vicarious, it's about you. Well, we have a vicarious atonement. It was for us. Okay, and so that's Christ being the substitute. That's replacing our, instead of our blood having to be shed for our sins, Christ was vicarious. It was a vicarious atonement. Okay, that's what that means, the substitution. So, and here's a little trivia for you. There's a thing called a vicar. I would pronounce it a vicar, and that's what this is from, now they got it all messed up, but it's in the Catholic Church. But that's what that word means, is vicarious. It's V-I-C-A-R. So, anyway, so vicarious, we're blessed because we don't have to take that because Jesus did. All right. Now the next section here, I've kind of called it, it's about the tongue, really. And we'll see if we can get through it before we have to quit. Verse 9, a hypocrite with his mouth destroyeth his neighbor, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered. When it goeth well with the righteous, the city rejoiceth, and the wicked perish. And when the wicked perish, there is shouting. By the blessing of the upright the city is exalted, but is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. He that is void of wisdom despiseth his neighbor, but a man of understanding holdeth his peace. A talebearer revealeth secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit concealeth the matter. So, I might be stretching a little bit, but I think these are all involving the mouth, at least maybe all but one, to some degree. A hypocrite, okay. I don't know how old I was when I actually learned the proper definition of a hypocrite, but I was older than I should have been. A hypocrite is somebody who is two-faced. They are acting. An actor is a hypocrite. By definition, okay? That's where it came from. So, in this day and age, where they want everybody played by that person, like a disabled person playing a disabled person, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because they still have to act. But the point of the matter is you're acting anyway. So you can act disabled. And how do you do that? By acting however a disabled person would act in that situation. So, a hypocrite is an actor. A hypocrite is somebody nobody likes. And you know they're fake. Okay? Now, I take that to the extreme because I don't want to be a hypocrite so much that I try to work on this, but like I'm always a grump, so I don't want to fake being a nice person. Okay, now that's probably an improper application, but because there is such a thing as kind of faking it till you make it, you can, through having a better attitude, actually be a happier person. Plus, God doesn't want us to be unhappy and make everybody else miserable, and that's in our orbit. So a hypocrite is a two-faced, fake person who will say one thing to your face and then another thing behind your back. Okay? A hypocrite is not somebody that is smoking like a choo-choo train and then says, don't smoke, kids. That's not a hypocrite. He maybe can't quit. Or even if he doesn't want to quit, he knows that there are great health effects. And so he's telling you, I still like my cigarettes, but I know they're bad for me, but you don't like them yet. You haven't started smoking yet, so I'm giving you advice, don't do it. Okay? That person might be viewed as inconsistent. That's kind of the word we use. So if I say don't swear, and yet I smash my finger and I let loose an expletive, then I'm being inconsistent. It doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to me. I've tried to tell my children that. It's like, listen, the stuff I'm telling you is what we should all be doing. I fail at that because I'm human, and I don't try hard enough sometimes, and that's wrong. And I will be accountable to that, for that. But what I'm telling you is still valid. It's still relevant. You still need to do this. And I will hold you to these standards. I think it's interesting that my children sometimes, unfortunately, do the same thing. They say expletives sometimes, but I'm never around when they do that. They manage to control themselves and only say it when I'm not around, which means that they can control themselves completely. So, it's one of the reasons that I'm proud of Forrest is because he's chosen not to swear in a curse-rich environment. When it goeth well with the righteous, the city rejoiceth, and when the wicked perish, there is shouting. Everybody benefits when the righteous is in charge. Crime is less. things are better, economy, but spiritually, I mean, people are happier in general. I mean, it was weird when Trump was in office, and I'm not going to say he was righteous, right? But compared to the alternatives, he aligned more with what I would say are righteous views. Things they're better when a good person is in charge. They just are. Because a good person is going to be, or a righteous person especially, sometimes you have good leaders that aren't necessarily saved, but they're going to care about other people, they're going to care about what God says, and if they care about these things that God wants them to care about, then they're going to act on these things, which means that these things are going to be taken care of properly. It's really pretty simple. When the wicked perish, there is shouting. I mean, whatever you think the wicked are, people will rejoice whenever they perish. I mean, 9/11, Palestinians rejoiced when the Twin Towers fell because they viewed us as wicked. And honestly, 2023, wow. I mean, where we are is so shocking to me that I really see their point. I'm not saying they're right. They weren't right. Murder's murder. But, the wickedness that's in our society today is so prevalent and it is so bad. He that is void of wisdom despiseth his neighbor, but a man of understanding holdeth his peace. This one is pretty important. So we know our neighbor isn't just our literal neighbor. We're told that. But for the purposes of this illustration, I will use our literal neighbor. You have a neighbor. Maybe you're new, maybe they're new, doesn't really matter, maybe they've been there forever. But let's say they're playing loud music. Let's say it annoys you. So you've got some options. You can forbear. Nobody ever wants to do that. Forbear means you put up with it and don't complain. You just go, you know what? They have the right to listen to music. Maybe I don't like their music choices, or maybe it's too loud. Doesn't really matter. They have the freedom to do that. You can go talk to them and complain. You can be a weasel and call the cops. Sorry. You can call the police officers and report disturbing the peace or something. But the point of the matter is a man of understanding will hold his peace on so much. Okay, first of all, is this the first time this has ever happened? Well, maybe it's going to be the first and last. Okay, maybe somebody just got out of the military. They're throwing a party for him. Okay, and that's going to be the last time they ever do it. Are you going to get mad and go and cause a problem with your neighbor now? Well, guess what? You're living by that person. About the only other way you can make yourself more miserable is by picking fights with your wife or picking fights at your workplace. I mean, you have to live by these people. You don't want to make them miserable. But that goes for anything. If you're with anybody, holding your peace is a good default stance. And that's super difficult for most people. And in this day and age, it has become the extreme opposite. Pastor was talking about, in the end times, he's going through this list of stuff. And I went down, I wrote down every characteristic in the end times. And I was like, okay, do we have this? Do we have that? What does this one mean exactly? One of them was incontinent. Now, most people will know that means, they'll think it means you can't control your bladder or something. But it really just means you can't control yourself. Okay, you don't have any self-control. Yeah. No, people don't have self-control at all these days. Like, I don't go out and watch videos, make it a course to search the internet and find all these videos, but just in the ways that I consume news and stuff, I see things and some videos autoplay, and stuff. And it is crazy, the stuff that gets posted. I mean, one girl was, she was dressed very nicely, a young girl, school girl, high school age probably, and her teacher took her phone. Now, it was difficult to tell who the teacher was because the teacher just looked like a student. My dad always believed in wearing a tie to school because he wanted to differentiate himself from the unwashed masses of students, which I thought was good because you couldn't tell the teachers or staff from the students other than, by age. And he took the phone from her, and she responded by trying to get it back, and he's leaving the room and trying to go away. And then she takes her keys, and she has some pepper spray on there, and she sprays him in the eyes. Like, was that wise of her? I mean, even in this horrible age, you'd think there's got to be some kind of repercussions, although who knows? Who knows? But not controlling yourself. You got to control yourself. And so that's why if you don't know exactly what to do and you think that you're being taken advantage of or something, you know what? God's going to take care of you.
Still got to be careful because you can be a stumbling block for somebody. Because right out the gate, first thing someone's going to say when you become a Christian is, "Aha!"
Mm-hmm.
Thought you was a Christian. And that happened a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be careful.
Yeah, that is definitely true. We have to be careful, for sure. And so whenever we engage in activities that are deemed unchristian, the world is obviously they're noticing that stuff, and they will throw it in our faces, and it does damage our testimony. The last thing I'd like to cover really quick, a talebearer revealeth secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit concealeth the matter. Why is it when you find something out you want to tell people? Everybody wants to do it. Like, ooh. I mean, there was a guy at work, I didn't really know him. He got fired, and I figured this out by things I won't bore you with, but it's like I'm really curious about it. Like, why did he get fired? And it's none of my business. But even if I know, should I go run around and tell people? No. I mean, I'm pretty sure he got fired. But I mean, it's kind of sad because the few interactions I had with him seemed very good. So, secrets are hard to keep for a lot of people, and some people are better than others. But if somebody asks you to keep a secret, or even frequently if they don't, if you find something out, first of all, if somebody asks you to keep a secret, you keep the secret. It's just being a good friend. But if you find something out about somebody, it's almost never good to spread that information anyway, because it's usually something bad. You can say, and the fact of the matter is we do it because for some reason our brain releases some dopamine. It does. It releases a chemical about something, and that's why we do it, or we want to do it, but it's, the Bible says right here, a talebearer revealeth secrets, but he that is of faithful spirit concealeth the matter. So you will keep things to yourself. One of the worst problems, I think, that in a lot of churches is probably, busybodies, gossips. As Christians, if somebody's fallen in sin, okay, but you gotta approach that very carefully, right? And I don't want to go into the details on how you're supposed to do that, but we're generally supposed to mind our own business. And as a good friend says, private things are supposed to be private, okay? if you want to share some information so people can pray, that's fine. But share what they need to know. If somebody asks something, that's up to you, how much you want to share. Lots of times people do too much overshare. I think sometimes we don't have enough sharing in the church because I'm like, well, what's going on with this person? I want to pray about them. But in that case, if I care that much, I can ask the parent or whoever. I can go to the source and actually ask them, and they'll tell me. I'm confident if I actually ask the person, they'll tell me. It's just not necessarily broadcast. So maybe we don't have all these other problems, and we don't really have busybodies or talebearers or gossips in the church, but those are things we still have to guard against. Men can be guilty of it, although tend to, probably just because of the way God made us. Our genetic makeup probably doesn't do this as much, although I could be wrong. Maybe that's just a stereotype. But we know from right here, we're supposed to mind our own business. So whenever you want to do that, and your wife is telling you to do something, or you're telling your wife to do something, this is something that you can reflect back on and say, this is not our business. So we get all this knowledge out of the Bible. That's how we run our lives. We have these principles, and hopefully we've repeated stuff enough, and you guys have studied stuff enough, and you've heard stuff on the radio that's correct, and you've whatever, so that you can live your life by good biblical principles.